So
when they asked me,
he was like maybe this
yeah,
size, maybe.
when they asked me how I wanted to for them to take my son, I told them I want to deliver naturally because I knew that if I went to a DNC, it meant just using a vacuum. And as Christians, if we're going to defend life, we have to defend the sanctity of the form of human life from the beginning. And it wasn't until I shared that I had, because we could tell, and the reason I know it was a boy is because when he was born, we were able to see that he was a little boy. So I decided to share and be vocal about it because until the moment that I had um, a miscarriage or a stillbirth, nobody in church had ever mentioned something similar to that. And I didn't want other young women in church, if they were being rebellious against their parents or because maybe tragically they became pregnant out of whatever reason, to believe that before you can tell that there's a baby inside that it's not. And I remember that I shared it, and a lot of women started saying, "Oh yeah, I also lost,
No,
the
also you went to
pregnancy."
church like you gave them a speech?
No, I share a lot on my Instagram, not so
Okay.
much on Facebook,
Okay.
but I did share
Uh-huh.
it because I know that a lot of young women follow me on there from
Mhm.
church, from that I know, and it's important to validate it even when we can't see it, when we can't physically see a belly, um, because if somebody loses a child, a young woman, and you
Yeah.
just ignore it because it was a pregnancy, you're not validating that it's a life, that it was a soul that maybe didn't make it to grow and have a full developed conscience, but it's still somebody that got created within the womb, no matter how small. And yes, definitely, they're already complete and full
Yeah.
and a little person when they're at least 13 years.
Yeah, this is so true. Just this thing they don't know. So good job. This is what you need to tell them. But so like what was I going to say? I forgot. Okay, but like so we're going to when we're going to go, it's like okay, this Hope Medical, it's across Planned Parenthood. So what do you know about Planned Parenthood?
Right, right across from me.
Yeah, but what do you know? Okay, so again, so you can know there is no right opinion or wrong opinion. We know if Grace says, "Oh, I love Planned Parenthood," we're not going to say, "Oh, Grace, you should not love Planned Parenthood." Just your example. Uh, like we had in the previous classes, people totally said it's a great thing. Then they may change their mind, but So what is it?
Uh, well, I know that they perform abortions, and that
Mhm.
there's been a lot of controversy with how they do that and like how long in the term. So I
Mhm.
know that was kind of like a negative, but I also know that they do some other things like for women to help
Mhm.
with just like everything that we have to deal with. In
Yeah.
short, yeah.
Okay.
But
So I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm going to leave everything for when we get there. I guess to let them explain because it's almost time for our lab. There is one thing just for about the history. I think it's 2 minutes or 4 minutes. This about there was this scandal a few years ago about somebody recorded in a bar how some people who work at Planned Parenthood they were talking about how they're selling because they get the baby parts and they sell them do stuff. No, we don't want. Nobody wants your little scissors. Okay. So here,
I was gonna say it before you got here.
let's watch this and then we'll be done and we do the lab. Okay. So this is just a short.
Recent videos released by the Center for Medical Progress reveal Planned Parenthood's inhumane treatment of unborn children and its executives negotiating the sale of baby hearts, lungs, and livers. How did we get to this point? To understand present-day Planned Parenthood, we should understand Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood's founder and hero.
Margaret Sanger was a big proponent of negative eugenics, which was the viewpoint that you should weed out unfit people from the bloodline. So that would be encouraging people not to procreate if they were unfit, feeble-minded, had any kind of mental illness, and that also included forced sterilization.
Words like unfit and feeble-minded were used to describe not only the poor and mentally ill, but also to describe African Americans.
Margaret Sanger stated that birth control is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out the unfit, of preventing the birth of defectives or of those who will become defectives.
In 1921, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. Its primary mission was to prevent uncontrolled procreation and establish a world program of birth control.
She states, knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. Margaret Sanger stated that the most
This is the
merciful
history.
thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it.
In 1939, Sanger wrote a letter to her eugenics colleague, Dr. Clarence Gamble, a member of the Birth Control Federation of America, in regards to setting up the Negro Project, a birth control clinic for African Americans.
She was speaking about serving what she called the Negro population, and in concluding this portion of the letter, she stated that we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Sanger believed that having an African American minister on staff would ease the suspicion.
African American populations were considered some of these unfit members that should be weeded out. So in this letter, she discusses having African Americans serve other African Americans so they wouldn't be aware that they were seeking to terminate them, to exterminate them by the use of birth control and negative eugenics.
Sanger was quite fond of Dr. Ernst Ruden's work, director for the Society for Racial Hygiene. He would later go on to write Nazi Germany's sterilization laws. In 1933, she published his article, Eugenic Sterilization, an Urgent Need, which promoted programs to eliminate the unfit in order to create a super race. In the late 1930s and 40s, knowledge of Nazi atrocities made words like eugenics and population control unpopular in America. So in 1942, to distance itself in name, Margaret Sanger's American Birth Control League became Planned Parenthood. They weren't just being established in the U.S. It was global. A grim fact in American history was the forced sterilization of women in Puerto Rico. In 1936, sterilization programs spearheaded by the International Planned Parenthood Federation with funding from the U.S. government sterilized 1/3 of Puerto Rican women by 1968, making it the highest proportion of childbearing age persons sterilized in the world. And today,
Planned Parenthood facilities are generally located in low-income areas, which are heavily populated with minorities, and a lot of times they seek to reach those minorities to help them with reproductive rights, they say, with birth control, and largely abortion.
independent studies have concluded that nearly 80% of Planned Parenthood facilities are set up in minority communities. It's no wonder abortion is the leading cause of death among African Americans, higher than all other causes combined. Mounting evidence against Planned Parenthood's beginning to today continues to fuel public outcry.
The American people
Oh.
should seek to immediately defund Planned Parenthood.
So this is when they were trying to defund it. So we'll see. I'm leaving everything to when we get there, and they'll talk to us about it. Okay, so it's time to stop. So what is due next week? Next week it's due. What is due? Assignments again. September 6th. It's the reading questions 1 and 5. So you need to type them and turn them in. And then the movies. So 2 of those movies, Gusnell on Plant or It's a Girl. If you have time, just watch them all 3. The library, Canopy has It's a Girl. The Richland Library has Unplanned. If somebody has, I have 2 copies. And also, I don't know, Hulu, I don't know, whoever has. But if you have, I can give you my account from the library if you want to see the Unplanned. If you don't have a DVD player. And I have a DVD player you can borrow too. Okay. This concludes today's. Isaac is still trying to eat the rest of the Little Caesar because nobody wanted it. Okay. The end.